Have you ever felt truly insignificant? Not in the philosophical sense, but in a visceral, biological way that makes your chest tighten and your hands shake. Most of us go through life believing we're important, that our presence matters, that we exist at the center of our own story. But what happens when something shows you, without malice or intention, just how utterly small you really are? The Indian Ocean doesn't care about your rank. It doesn't care about your 20 years of service or your spotless record. On March 14th, during what should have been a routine transit, 6 naval vessels learned this lesson together. What they encountered wasn't aggressive, it wasn't curious. It was simply there, passing through their formation like they were nothing more than insects floating on a puddle. This is what happened when Commander Lucas Ward's Convoy became aware of something that made every ship, every weapon, every bit of technology they possessed feel like toys in a bathtub. The morning started the way every morning at sea does, with the metallic taste of recycled air and the constant low hum of engines that you stop noticing after the first week. Commander Lucas Ward stood on the bridge of the USS Valiant, a guided missile destroyer leading a 6-ship formation through international waters. The convoy was 3 days into a 2-week transit, hauling equipment and personnel from Singapore to Diego Garcia. Standard stuff. Boring stuff. The kind of assignment that looks good on paper but tests your ability to stay awake during 12-hour shifts. Ward was 44. Career Navy, the kind of officer who ironed his uniform before every watch and maintained what his crew called command posture, even in the shower. He'd spent 2 decades at sea, from the cramped quarters of a submarine to the spacious bridge of a destroyer, and he'd learned one fundamental truth: routine keeps you alive. Discipline, procedure, never deviate. "Morning, Skipper," Lieutenant Aaron Voss said as he entered the bridge carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Ward without asking, the ritual already established during their 6 months serving together. "Morning, Voss," Ward replied, accepting the cup. "Sonar contacts overnight?" "Nothing unusual, few biologics, commercial traffic keeping proper distance. The ocean's practically empty." Voss was 31. Skinny in a way that made his uniform look borrowed, with dark circles under his eyes that never quite went away. He'd come from submarine duty, had spent years in the deep listening to the ocean's secrets. There was something about submariners that regular surface sailors could always spot, a certain tension in their shoulders, like they were always aware of the crushing pressure waiting just outside the hull. The bridge was quiet except for the steady ping of radar and the low chatter of watchstanders calling out bearings and contacts. Through the reinforced windows, Ward could see the rest of the convoy spread across the calm water, each ship maintaining perfect formation. The USS Grayson and USS Mitchell flanked them to port and starboard, while the supply ships Mercy's Run, Carson Bay, and Atlantic Venture followed in trail, 6 ships moving as one. "Beautiful morning," Ward observed, which was his way of reminding everyone to stay alert. Beautiful mornings made people complacent. "Calm as glass," Ensign Tyler Brooks added from his position near the communications station. Brooks was 24, fresh from the academy, still young enough to find the ocean romantic instead of tedious. He had that eager puppy energy that made the older crew members either protective or annoyed, depending on their mood. "Don't trust it," Chief Petty Officer Daniel Rourke muttered from the radar station. Rourke was 52, thick around the middle, with hands like weathered leather and eyes that had seen 3 decades of naval service. "Calm waters when the weird stuff happens." "Chief's been reading too many sea stories," Voss said with a grin. "Chief's been at sea long enough to know better," Rourke shot back, but there was no heat in it. "You spend 30 years on the water, you learn the ocean's got a personality, and when she goes quiet like this, she's usually planning something." Ward didn't comment. He'd served with Rourke for 2 years, and learned that the chief's superstitions were usually just colorful storytelling. But occasionally, very occasionally, the old sailor's instincts proved useful. Still, This was a professional bridge, and he wouldn't have the watchstanders getting spooked by tales. Dr. Samuel Crane emerged from the stairwell looking worse for wear. The civilian consultant had been aboard for a week, collecting acoustic data for some marine biology research project that Ward hadn't bothered reading the full brief on. Crane was 47, professorial in that rumpled way academics get when they spend too much time in labs, with gray-streaked hair that looked like it had been cut with safety scissors. "How's the data collection going, Doctor?" Ward asked, more out of courtesy than curiosity. "Fascinating, actually," Crane replied, steadying himself against a console as the ship rolled gently. "The acoustic profile out here is remarkably clean. Very little ambient noise. It's like the ocean's holding its breath." There was that phrase again. Ward noticed Rourke's slight nod, as if the chief found validation in the scientist's observation. The morning watch continued with mechanical precision. Position reports every 30 minutes. Communications checks with the other ships. Weather updates showing continued clear skies and calm seas. Everything by the book. At 11:27 hours, everything changed. "Sir," Voss said, his voice suddenly sharp. "Sonar contact. Subsurface. Large." Ward was beside him in 3 steps. "Classification?" Voss stared at his screen, his face pale in the green glow. "Unknown. It's big, sir. Really big." "Define really big, Lieutenant." "Sir, I'm reading a contact that spans." Voss's voice trailed off. He adjusted his headphones, double-checked his equipment. "Skipper, this can't be right." Ward leaned over the sonar display. The screen showed the 6 ships of their convoy, clear white blips against the dark background. And beneath them, stretching under the entire formation, was something else. A shadow. A darkness on the sonar that didn't make sense because it was too uniform, too large. "That's a malfunction," Ward said immediately. "Run diagnostics." "Running them now, sir." Voss's fingers flew across the keyboard. The sonar reset, flickered, came back showing the same impossible image. "Systems functioning normally, no faults detected." "Then it's a thermocline. Cold water layer, reflecting our own sonar back at us." "Sir, thermoclines don't move." Ward looked again. The shadow on the screen was keeping pace with the convoy, matching their speed exactly. 12 knots. The same bearing. The same heading. "Get me eyes on the water," Ward ordered. "Brooks, grab binoculars and get out on the bridge wing. I want visual confirmation of anything unusual." "Aye, sir." Brooks grabbed the binoculars and pushed through the hatch to the exterior observation deck. Ward picked up the communications handset. "This is Valiant Actual to all ships. Query any subsurface contacts, vicinity our formation. Report immediately." The responses came back within seconds. Every ship in the convoy was seeing the same thing. A massive sonar returned directly beneath them, keeping perfect pace with their formation. "Skipper," Rourke called out. "I'm getting something weird on the magnetic sensors. Minor fluctuations, but steady." Ward felt the first cold finger of unease trace down his spine. In 20 years at sea, he'd encountered submarines, whales, underwater terrain features, equipment malfunctions, and user error. He'd never encountered something that appeared on sonar, affected magnetic sensors, and moved in perfect synchronization with a 6-ship convoy. "Dr. Crane," Ward said, keeping his voice level, "your expertise is in marine acoustics. What am I looking at?" Crane had moved to stand behind Voss, studying the sonar display with intense focus. "I don't know," he admitted. "The acoustic profile is unlike anything in my database. It's not a whale, certainly not a school of fish. The size alone rules out any known biological entity. Could it be geological, an underwater current-carrying sediment?" "Currents don't maintain formation speed with surface vessels," Crane replied. "And the acoustic return is too solid, too defined. Whatever this is, it has mass." Significant mass. Brooks burst back through the hatch, his face flushed. "Sir, you need to see this." Ward followed him out onto the bridge wing, Voss and Crane right behind him. The sunlight was almost blinding after the dim bridge, the ocean spreading out in every direction like a sheet of hammered silver. The convoy maintained its perfect formation, 6 ships cutting white wakes through the glassy water. "There," Brooks pointed. "Watch the water between the ships." At first, Ward saw nothing unusual, just the normal play of light on water, the slight chop created by the ship's passage. Then he noticed it. A distortion in the light itself, as if something massive and dark was moving just below the surface, creating subtle variations in how the sunlight refracted through the water. "It's like looking at something through heat shimmer," Brooks said quietly, "but in the water." Ward raised his binoculars, focusing on the area between the Valiant and the Grayson. There was definitely something there, something that changed the texture of the light, made the water appear darker, denser. He tracked along what should have been empty ocean, and realized with growing disquiet that the distortion extended as far as he could see. "How far does this go?" he asked, though he already knew the answer would be bad. "All the way across the formation, sir," Brooks replied. "I checked while you were coming out. It's under all 6 ships." Voss had his sonar headphones pressed tight against his ears, eyes closed in concentration. "Sir, I'm picking up something else. Pressure wave. Subsonic. It's like the water itself is moving." Dr. Crane pulled out a small handheld device from his pocket, some kind of personal acoustic analyzer. He held it over the railing, watching the readout. His expression shifted from curious to concerned to something approaching fear. "Gentlemen," he said softly, "we need to check something. Right now." They returned to the bridge, Crane making directly for the navigation station. He pulled up a digital chart of the surrounding ocean, then overlaid the sonar data. "Show me the exact dimensions of that contact," he instructed Voss. Voss fed the data to the main display. The shadow appeared on the screen, and Crane began calculating, his fingers moving rapidly across the keyboard. "Jesus," he whispered. "Doctor?" Ward prompted. Crane turned to face him, and Ward saw something in the scientist's eyes he hadn't seen before. Genuine fear. "Commander, if this sonar data is accurate, we're looking at something approximately 800 feet in length." The bridge went silent, except for the background hum of equipment. "That's impossible," Ward said flatly. The largest animal ever recorded was a blue whale at around 100 feet. Nothing biological reaches 800 feet. "I'm aware of that, Commander," Crane replied, "which is why I need to stress. This can't be biological. It must be geological, man-made, something else. But whatever it is, it's real, it's massive, and it's directly beneath us." Ward felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders. He had 6 ships, over 3,000 personnel, millions of dollars in equipment and cargo, and beneath them, something impossible was keeping perfect pace with their formation. "Options," he said crisply. "Give me options." "We could change course," Voss suggested. "See if it follows or breaks away." "We could slow to a stop," Rourke added. "Let it pass ahead of us." "We could signal fleet command," Brooks said. "Request instructions." Ward considered each option, weighing risks and rewards the way they taught him at command school. But no textbook covered. Unknown massive object keeping pace with your convoy. Negative on course change, he decided. If this is some kind of submarine, hostile or otherwise, I don't want to show we're aware of it. We maintain current course and speed. Voss, keep sonar locked on that contact. Rourke, monitor all sensors. Crane, I want continuous analysis of that acoustic data. Brooks, draft a message to Fleet Command, but don't send it yet. I want more information before we start screaming about sea monsters. Sir, Brooks said hesitantly, what do we tell the crew? The other ships are going to want answers. Ward looked out at the impossibly calm ocean, at the perfect blue sky, at the orderly formation of naval vessels proceeding along their planned route. Everything looked normal. Everything looked safe. But beneath them, keeping pace in the dark water, something massive and unknown had decided to accompany them on their journey. "Tell them we're tracking a large underwater contact of unknown origin," Ward said. "Tell them we're monitoring the situation. Tell them to remain alert but calm." What he didn't tell them was the question eating at him. If something that large wanted to be a threat, what could they possibly do about it? The afternoon watch began with unusual tension. Word had spread through the ship despite Ward's attempts at downplaying the situation. Sailors are gossips by nature, trapped together on floating steel islands with nothing but rumors and speculation to break the monotony. By 1300 hours, every crew member knew something unusual was happening beneath them. Ward remained on the bridge, technically off watch but unable to leave. He stood near the windows, coffee going cold in his hand, watching the unchanging ocean. Behind him, the watch team maintained their posts with mechanical precision, but he could feel their unease. It was in the way they kept glancing at the sonar station, the way their chatter had died down to essential communications only. Voss had barely moved from his position, headphones on, eyes locked on his screen like it might reveal some crucial secret if he stared hard enough. Every 30 minutes he gave the same report. Contact maintaining position, size unchanged, no variation in bearing or depth. At 14:37 hours, the first change occurred. "Sir," Voss said, and something in his tone made everyone on the bridge freeze. "The contact is moving." Ward was at his side immediately. "Define moving." It's ascending, slowly, coming up from approximately 1,500 feet depth." Crane joined them, his analyzer clutched in both hands. "Can you give me rate of ascent?" "Roughly 30 feet per minute, steady and controlled." "That's not a passive ascent," Crane said. "That's deliberate movement, powered." Ward felt his jaw tighten. Something 800 feet long, rising from the deep, directly beneath his convoy. Every instinct screamed at him to take evasive action, to scatter the formation, to run. But run where? And from what? "How deep is it now?" he asked. 900 feet and rising. Ward grabbed the communications handset. "All ships, this is Valiant Actual. Be advised, subsurface contact is changing depth. Maintain current course and speed. Maintain heightened readiness condition." He could imagine the reactions on the other bridges: confusion, concern. Fear masked by professionalism. Good officers would be checking their weapon systems, making sure their crews were ready for what? You couldn't shoot at something if you didn't know what it was. 600 feet, Voss reported. Brooks had moved to the windows, binoculars pressed to his face. "Sir, the water's changing. That distortion we saw before, it's getting stronger." Ward joined him, looking down at the ocean directly alongside the ship. Brooks was right. The water had taken on a strange quality, darker somehow, thicker, as if something impossibly large was displacing the ocean itself. 400 feet. Rourke crossed himself, a quick gesture he probably didn't realize he'd made. The chief's weathered face had gone pale. 300 feet. "This is a bad idea," Rourke muttered. "Whatever this is, coming up to meet us, this is a bad idea." Ward didn't respond because he agreed. Every rational part of his mind was screaming that nothing natural behaved this way, that they were in danger, that he should be doing something, instead of standing here watching a catastrophe unfold in slow motion. 200 feet. The bridge had gone completely silent except for the sonar pings in Voss's measured reports. Ward realized he was holding his breath. 100 feet and leveling off. Whatever was beneath them had stopped rising. It now hung in the water 100 feet below the surface, still keeping perfect pace with the convoy. Ward looked through the windows at the other ships, saw their crews lining the rails, everyone staring down into the water. "Can anyone see it?" he asked. Brooks had his binoculars trained on the space between ships. "There's something there, like a shadow, but it's wrong, sir. It's too big. It's under all of us," Voss finished quietly. "Every ship, simultaneously." Dr. Crane was frantically working his analyzer, pulling up what looked like sonar imaging on a laptop he'd retrieved from somewhere. "Commander, I need you to see this." Ward looked at the screen. Crane had overlaid multiple sonar readings, creating a three-dimensional acoustic map of what lay beneath them. What Ward saw made his mouth go dry. The contact wasn't just big, it was geometrically perfect. A long, tapered shape that stretched beneath the entire convoy formation, as if something had deliberately positioned itself to remain directly under all 6 ships. The proportions were wrong for any submarine, wrong for any known whale species, wrong for any man-made vessel. "What am I looking at?" Ward asked. "I don't know," Crane admitted. "The acoustic signature is biological. I'm picking up what might be muscle movement, possibly respiratory activity. But nothing biological reaches this size. Nothing. The square cube law alone would make something this massive physically impossible. It couldn't support its own weight, couldn't get enough oxygen, couldn't maintain body temperature. Yet here it is," Ward said. "Yet here it is," Crane echoed. A voice crackled over the radio. It was Commander Hirsch from the USS Grayson. "Valiant, this is Grayson Actual. We need to discuss our situation, immediately." Ward picked up the handset, knowing what was coming. "Go ahead, Grayson." "Lucas, what the hell are we dealing with here? My sonar chief is telling me we've got something the size of an aircraft carrier following us. That can't be right." "I'm looking at the same data, John. I don't have an explanation." "Then we need to call this in, get Fleet Command on the line, request immediate support." "And tell them what? That we're being shadowed by something impossible? They'll think we've lost our minds." "Better they think we're crazy than we all end up at the bottom of the ocean." Ward closed his eyes briefly. Hirsch was right, of course. Protocol dictated immediate reporting of any threat to the convoy. But what if this wasn't a threat? What if they were witnessing something so rare, so unprecedented, that reacting defensively would be the wrong move? "Give me 2 hours," Ward said. "Let's see what this thing does. If it shows any aggressive behavior, any at all, we scatter and run for port. But right now, it's just there." A long pause. Then, 2 hours, Lucas, but I'm keeping my finger on the panic button. Ward set down the handset and turned to find his entire bridge crew staring at him. He saw doubt in their eyes, concern, fear. They were looking to him for answers he didn't have. "Sir," Brooks said carefully, "what if it's not trying to threaten us? What if it's just curious?" "Curious about what?" Voss asked. "We're not exactly rare. 6 ships passing through international waters. It should have seen plenty of vessels before." "Unless it hasn't," Crane said slowly. "Unless this is something that spends most of its time at depths we can't reach, in places we never go, and we just happen to pass directly over it." Rourke laughed, but there was no humor in it. "So it decided to come up for a look? Take a peek at the funny little boats on the surface?" "Maybe," Crane replied. "We don't know its motivations. We don't even know what it is." Ward looked down at the dark water, at the shadow that moved in perfect synchronization with his ship. Something 800 feet long. Something that existed in defiance of known biology. Something that had chosen to rise from the deep and pace them through the ocean. And the most terrifying part? It hadn't made a single aggressive move. It was simply there, present, aware. making them feel insignificant in a way that no weapon could achieve. The next hour passed with the slowness of a nightmare. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously, every minute feeling like 10, while the clock insisted only 60 seconds had passed. Ward remained on the bridge, his command posture beginning to crack around the edges. He'd sent Brooks to get fresh coffee 20 minutes ago, but the ensign hadn't returned. Probably got caught answering questions from nervous crew members. At 15:20 hours, the second change occurred. "Sir," Voss said, his voice tight. "Temperature anomaly." Ward's head snapped toward the sonar station. "Explain." "Water temperature around the contact is dropping. We're reading a decrease of almost 8 degrees Fahrenheit in a spherical pattern surrounding it." Crane immediately pulled up his own data. "That's impossible. Water temperature doesn't just drop like that in open ocean. Unless," he trailed off, calculations racing behind his eyes. "Unless what, Doctor?" Ward pressed. "Unless something that large is drawing heat from the surrounding water. If it's biological, maintaining body temperature would require enormous energy expenditure. But to cool the water around it suggests the opposite. It's either cold-blooded or it's actively radiating heat away from itself." "Like a submarine running cold?" Rourke suggested. "Submarines don't span 800 feet, Chief." The temperature continued to drop. Ward watched the thermal sensors, seeing the cold zone expand outward from the contact. It was like watching ice form in fast motion, a bubble of frigid water growing beneath them. 9-degree drop now, Voss reported, still decreasing. Ward's mind raced through possibilities. Submarines use temperature layers to hide from sonar. Some species of deep-sea fish created bioluminescent displays that affected water chemistry, but nothing, absolutely nothing, in his 2 decades of experience explained what he was seeing. "Skipper," Rourke called out, "magnetic anomaly increasing. I'm reading fluctuations across all sensors." "What kind of fluctuations?" "Like something's creating its own magnetic field, or disrupting Earth's field." "I don't know, sir. I've never seen readings like this." Ward moved between stations checking data, trying to piece together a coherent picture from fragments of impossible information. Temperature drop, magnetic interference, acoustic anomalies. It was like the contact was affecting the fundamental properties of the water around it. Brooks finally returned with coffee, his uniform slightly disheveled. "Sorry, sir. Got cornered by half the engineering division. They're asking questions I can't answer." "Welcome to the club, Ensign," Ward muttered, accepting the cup. The coffee was already lukewarm. "Sir, permission to speak freely?" "Granted." Brooks glanced around the bridge, lowering his voice. "The crew's scared. They don't understand what's happening, and honestly, neither do I. But they trust you. Whatever you decide, they'll follow. I just thought you should know that." Ward felt the weight of those words settle on top of the already crushing responsibility. 3,000 people across 6 ships, all looking to him for leadership while he stood here as confused and frightened as any of them. "Thank you, Brooks. I'll keep that in mind." At 15:47 hours, Dr. Crane suddenly straightened from his laptop, his face pale. "Commander, I need to show you something. Right now." Ward joined him at the small workstation Crane had commandeered. The scientist pulled up a series of acoustic waveforms, color-coded and layered over each other like a complex piece of music. "What am I looking at?" "Acoustic emissions from the contact," Crane explained rapidly. "At first I thought it was just ambient noise, water movement around something that large. But look here," he highlighted a specific frequency range. "This is structured, it's not random." "Are you saying it's communicating?" "I'm saying it's producing patterned acoustic signals. Whether that constitutes communication, I can't say. But these patterns repeat at regular intervals. Listen." Crane played an audio file through his laptop speakers. At first, Ward heard nothing but static and the low rumble of ocean noise. Then, beneath it, he detected something else. a deep, subsonic pulse that made his chest vibrate. It came in waves, regular as a heartbeat, but slower, more deliberate. Boom, boom, boom. "That's not biological," Voss said from his station, headphones now off so he could hear Crane's playback. "That's too regular, too precise." "Actually," Crane corrected, "it could be very biological. Whale songs follow regular patterns. Dolphin echolocation is precisely timed. If this is a living creature, acoustic signals are exactly what we'd expect." "But whale songs don't sound like that," Ward said. "They don't make you feel like your skeleton's vibrating." "Whale songs also don't come from 800-foot animals," Crane replied. "We're in completely uncharted territory here." The pulses continued, transmitted through Crane's laptop, but also, Ward realized, thrumming up through the deck plates beneath his feet. The entire ship was resonating with those deep, slow beats. Boom, boom, boom. "It's getting louder," Rourke observed. "Or closer, or both." Ward checked the sonar display. The contact hadn't moved from its position 100 feet below the surface. But Rourke was right. The intensity was increasing. "Voss, any change in depth?" "Negative, sir. Maintaining 100 feet, but—" Voss adjusted his headphones, listening intently. "Sir, I'm picking up harmonics now, like the main pulse is generating secondary frequencies." Crane was typing frantically, analyzing the new data. "He's right. The original frequency is spawning overtones. It's like the water itself is singing." Ward had a sudden, vivid image of something vast and ancient down in the darkness, producing sounds that turned the ocean into a musical instrument. The thought should have been absurd, but instead it filled him with a profound sense of unease. "Can we respond?" Brooks asked suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. "I mean," the ensign continued, "if it's trying to communicate, shouldn't we try to respond? Let it know we're intelligent beings, too." "How do you propose we do that?" Ward asked, not unkindly. "Active sonar. We could send a signal back. Something patterned, like what it's doing." Voss shook his head. "Active sonar is aggressive. We'd be painting it with sound energy, basically yelling at it. If this thing can be provoked, that's how you do it." "But if it's intelligent," Brooks persisted, "it might recognize the attempt at communication." Ward considered the suggestion. It was risky, potentially dangerous. But they were already in an unprecedented situation. Maybe unconventional thinking was exactly what they needed. "Dr. Crane, in your professional opinion, would active sonar constitute a threat response?" Crane thought for a long moment. "Depends on the creature. Many marine animals find human sonar painful, disorienting. But something this size? Our sonar would be like a flashlight to a whale. Noticeable, but hardly threatening. If it's intelligent, it might interpret the signal as attempted communication. If it's not intelligent, it probably won't care. And if it gets angry? Then we're in the same position we're already in, at the mercy of something that could destroy us if it wanted to." Ward walked to the windows, staring out at the deceptively peaceful ocean. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the water in shades of gold and amber. Beautiful, serene, completely at odds with the massive unknown presence beneath them. He thought about his career, his training, all the decisions that had led him to this moment. Nothing had prepared him for this. Nothing could have. "Voss," he said finally, "prepare a single active sonar pulse, low frequency, short duration. Pattern it after the acoustic signals we're receiving. Let's see if this thing recognizes itself being reflected back." "Aye, sir." Voss's fingers moved across his controls. "Ready on your command." "Dr. Crane, I want you monitoring every sensor we have. Any change in behavior, any reaction at all, I want to know immediately." "Understood." Ward picked up the communications handset. "All ships. This is Valiant Actual. We are about to transmit active sonar as an experimental communication attempt with the subsurface contact. All vessels maintain current position and readiness. Be prepared for possible evasive maneuvers." He received acknowledgments from all 5 other ships. Ward could imagine their commanders, seasoned officers like himself, struggling with the same questions, the same fears, the same complete absence of protocol for this situation. "Rourke, if this goes badly, what's our fastest route to clear water?" The chief consulted his charts. "Bearing 270 would take us into shallower water. Contact this size couldn't follow, but we'd have to break formation, leave the supply ships behind." "Noted. Voss, send the pulse." Voss toggled the control. Through the deck, Ward felt more than heard the active sonar pulse emanate from the ship's hull. It was like a bell ringing underwater, a focused beam of sound energy directed down into the depths where the shadow waited. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the ocean exploded with response. The subsonic pulses they'd been detecting suddenly amplified 100-fold. Ward felt his teeth vibrate, felt the bones in his skull resonate with frequencies that shouldn't be audible but somehow were. The ship itself groaned, steel plates singing with sympathetic vibrations. "Jesus Christ!" Voss tore his headphones off, nearly falling from his chair. Sir, the acoustic output just went off the scale." Crane was staring at his laptop screen in shock. "It's not aggressive, it's responding. It heard our pulse, and it's answering back." The entire bridge crew felt it now, a physical sensation of sound so deep it bypassed ears entirely and resonated directly in their chests. Boom, 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 a pattern. A rhythm. Not random, not chaotic. Structured. "It's mimicking us," Crane said, his voice filled with awe. "We sent a simple pulse, and it's sending back a complex variation on the same theme. This is communication. Actual communication." Brooks had his hands pressed against the window, feeling the vibrations through the reinforced glass. "It's like music, like it's singing to us." Ward wanted to share their wonder, but his training kept pulling him back to practical concerns. "Voss, is it moving?" "No, sir. Still maintaining position, but the acoustic output." "Commander, this thing is generating sound energy equivalent to dozens of whales simultaneously. The amount of power required." "Is it threatening us?" Ward interrupted. "No, sir. It's just loud." The pulses continued for another 20 seconds, complex patterns of sound that made the ship resonate like a tuning fork. Then, gradually, they diminished. The subsonic thrumming faded back to its original level, that slow, steady heartbeat they'd first detected. Boom, boom, boom. The bridge crew stood in stunned silence, processing what had just happened. They'd reached out to something unknown, and it had reached back. "Doctor?" Ward prompted when Crane said nothing. The scientist looked up from his laptop, and Ward saw tears on his face. "Commander, in my entire career I've studied ocean acoustics, marine life, the complex songs of whales and dolphins. But this..." He gestured helplessly at a screen. "This is the most sophisticated acoustic display I've ever witnessed. If this is a living creature, and I believe it is, we've just made contact with something that possesses intelligence, actual, demonstrable intelligence." "Can it understand us?" Brooks asked. "I don't know, but it understood that we were trying to communicate. It recognized our sonar pulse as intentional, not random noise, and it responded in kind." Ward felt something shifting in his perception. For the past few hours, he'd been treating the contact as a threat, something to be monitored and potentially fled from. But what if it wasn't a threat? What if it was simply aware? "Sir," Rourke said quietly, "I've got to be honest. I've been at sea my entire adult life. I've heard every story, every legend, every sailor's tale about things in the deep. And I always figured they were just stories. But this, he gestured at the sonar display, at the dark water outside. This is real. This is actually happening. Yes, Chief, it is. So what do we do? That was the question, wasn't it? What did you do when faced with something that redefined your understanding of what was possible? When confronted with intelligence so alien, so massive, that your every instinct screamed it shouldn't exist? Ward thought about the 2 hours he'd promised Commander Hirsch. Almost half that time had passed, and they were no closer to understanding what they were dealing with. But they had learned one crucial thing. Whatever this was, it wasn't simply a mindless creature. It was aware. It was responsive. It was thinking. We continue as planned, Ward decided. Maintain course and speed. Continue monitoring. Dr. Crane, I want detailed analysis of that acoustic exchange. Every frequency, every pattern. If this thing is trying to tell us something, I want to know what. Aye, sir. Voss, keep sonar locked. Any deviation from its current behavior, I want to know immediately. Yes, sir. Brooks, get back to the crew. Tell them we're in contact with an unknown marine species. Tell them it's not hostile. Tell them we're attempting to understand it. Sir, is it really not hostile? Ward looked at the young ensign, seeing his own fears reflected back at him. Honestly, Brooks, I don't know. But it's had multiple opportunities to attack, and it hasn't. That has to count for something. Brooks nodded and headed for the hatch, leaving to spread what comfort he could among an increasingly anxious crew. The sun continued its descent, painting the sky in deeper shades of red and orange. In an hour, it would be dark. And Ward realized with a cold knot in his stomach that they'd be spending the night with something massive and unknown swimming beneath them. He thought about sleep, about trying to rest while that thing kept pace with them through the dark water. The thought was almost laughable. Sir, Voss said, breaking the silence, the contact is moving again. Ward's fatigue vanished instantly. Where? Descending slowly. Same rate as before, about 30 feet per minute. Ward watched the sonar display as the massive shadow began sinking back into the depths. 150 feet. 200. 300. Is it leaving? Unknown, sir. It's still maintaining our course and speed, just going deeper. Ward felt an unexpected pang of something that might have been disappointment. After the excitement of contact, of communication, was it simply swimming away? Had they bored it, disappointed it somehow? 400 feet. 500. The shadow continued to descend, dropping back into the darkness from which it had emerged. Ward found himself hoping it would stop, would remain within range of their sensors. He wanted to know more, needed to know more. 800 feet. 900. At 1,000 feet, the contact leveled off. It hung there for almost a minute, still keeping pace with the convoy, but now deep enough that visual contact was impossible. Only sonar could track it now. Then, without warning, it accelerated. Sir, contact is increasing speed. 15 knots. 20. 25. Ward gripped the edge of the console. Is it charging us? Negative. It's pulling ahead, moving away from the convoy. On the sonar display, the massive shadow began to separate from their formation. It moved with purpose now, no longer matching their leisurely 12 knots. 30 knots. 35. Speed that something that size shouldn't be able to achieve. Bearing? Ward demanded. 090, due east. Sir, it's just leaving. They watched in silence as the contact pulled ahead, accelerating to 40 knots, then 45. The sonar return grew fainter, more distant, the massive shadow shrinking on the display. "What's it doing?" Brooks asked, having returned to the bridge. "Going home," Rourke said softly. "Whatever it wanted from us, it got it. Now it's going back to wherever the hell something like that lives." Crane was typing rapidly, saving every second of data. The speed alone is remarkable. Something that massive shouldn't be capable of those velocities. The hydrodynamic drag should be enormous. "But it's doing it anyway," Ward observed, "because it doesn't care about what should be possible." They tracked the contact for another 10 minutes as it raced eastward, diving deeper as it went. 1,200 feet, 1,500, 1,800. At 2,000 feet, it passed beyond the range of their sonar, disappearing into the vast darkness of the deep ocean. And just like that, it was gone. The bridge felt somehow emptier without its presence. For hours, that massive shadow had dominated their attention, their fear, their wonder. Now there was just empty ocean again, ordinary water, the same boring transit they'd been conducting that morning. Except nothing felt ordinary anymore. "Dr. Crane," Ward said, "did we get enough data?" Crane nodded slowly. "Hours of acoustic data, sonar imagery, magnetic readings, temperature profiles. This is the discovery of a lifetime, Commander. Something that large, that intelligent, that completely unknown to science. The implications are staggering. Will anyone believe us? With this data, they'll have to. We have corroboration from 6 ships, multiple sensor systems, recordings from civilian and military sources. This isn't a sea story. This is documented fact." Ward picked up the communications handset. "All ships, this is Valiant Actual. Subsurface contact has departed the area. Resume normal watch conditions. All commanders submit detailed reports of the incident for Fleet Command. Valiant out." He set down the handset and allowed himself to sink into his command chair for the first time in hours. His legs were shaking. His hands trembled slightly. The adrenaline that had kept him sharp and focused was draining away, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" Voss asked. "Granted." "What the hell was that?" Ward laughed, surprising himself. "I have no idea, Lieutenant. Absolutely no idea." "Are we going to tell the truth in the report?" "We're going to tell exactly what happened. An unknown massive biological entity maintained position with our convoy for several hours, demonstrated apparent intelligence through acoustic communication, then departed. Let the admirals and scientists figure out what it means." Rourke was shutting down his extra monitoring systems, returning the bridge to normal operations. "You know they're going to think we're crazy." "Probably. You know they're going to ask why we didn't try to capture it, track it, study it more aggressively." "Let them ask." "You know some admiral is going to demand we explain why we let something that valuable just swim away." Ward stood, stretching muscles that had been tense for hours. "Then I'll explain that we were 6 surface ships with nothing that could touch something at that depth, moving at those speeds. I'll explain that attempting to capture or contain something that massive would have been suicide. And I'll explain that sometimes, Chief, the correct military response is to simply observe and learn." He walked to the windows, looking out at the darkening ocean. Somewhere out there, swimming through pressures that would crush a submarine like a tin can, was something magnificent and terrifying. Something that had chosen to rise from the depths, pace them through the water, and then simply leave. "Sir?" Brooks joined him at the window. "Do you think it was the only one?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. If one creature of that size existed, could there be others? How many unknowns still lurked in the unexplored depths, living their lives beyond human awareness? "I hope not," Ward said finally. "For our sake, I hope it has company down there. I hope it's not alone." "Why?" Because if something that magnificent is the last of its kind, that would be the real tragedy. The sun finally slipped below the horizon, and darkness claimed the ocean. The convoy sailed on through the night, 6 ships proceeding according to plan, their crews processing an experience that none of them would ever forget. And far below, in depths where light never reached and pressure measured in tons per square inch, something massive moved through the darkness. Whether it thought about the strange floating objects it had encountered, whether it remembered the sounds they'd made, whether it understood that it had briefly touched another intelligence, these questions remained unanswered. The ocean kept its secrets, as it always had. The convoy reached Diego Garcia 4 days later without further incident. The transit had been uneventful, almost aggressively normal, as if the ocean itself was trying to make them forget what they'd witnessed. But forgetting was impossible. Ward spent those 4 days writing and rewriting his report, trying to find language that conveyed the magnitude of what had happened without sounding like he'd lost his mind. Every version felt inadequate. How did you describe insignificance? How did you put into words the sensation of being utterly, completely irrelevant? He settled on clinical precision, dates, times, coordinates, sonar readings and acoustic data, temperature measurements and magnetic anomalies. Let the numbers speak for themselves. Let the scientists draw conclusions. He was just a naval officer reporting an encounter with an unidentified subsurface contact. The other commanders submitted similar reports, 6 separate accounts, all corroborating the same impossible story. Ward took some comfort in that. They couldn't all be crazy. Dr. Crane had barely slept during the transit, consumed by his data analysis. He'd set up shop in the Valiant small science lab, surrounding himself with printouts and laptop screens, playing and replaying the acoustic recordings until Ward was certain the man could hear them in his dreams. On the morning they entered Diego Garcia's harbor, Crane appeared on the bridge looking like he'd aged 10 years. His eyes were red-rimmed, his hair even more disheveled than usual, but there was a manic energy about him. "Commander," he said without preamble, "I need to show you something before we dock." Ward had been watching the lush green island emerge from the tropical haze, grateful to see land after 4 days of questioning his sanity. "Can it wait, Doctor? We're about to begin mooring procedures." "Sir, you need to see this, now." Something in Crane's tone made Ward follow him to the science lab. Brooks, curious, trailed behind them. The lab was a disaster zone of scattered papers, empty coffee cups, and enough electronic equipment to stock a small university. Crane navigated the chaos with practiced ease, pulling up a series of spectrograms on his primary laptop. "I've been analyzing the acoustic exchange we had with the contact," he began. "Specifically, the response it gave after we transmitted our sonar pulse. Look at this." The spectrogram showed a complex pattern of frequencies, layered and interwoven like a piece of abstract art. Ward had no idea what he was looking at. "This is our initial pulse." Crane highlighted a simple spike on the graph. 1 frequency, short duration, basic pattern recognition. Very simple. "Now, look at the response." He brought up a second spectrogram, this one vastly more complex. Where the human transmission had been a single note, the response was a symphony. Multiple frequencies, harmonics, patterns within patterns. "It didn't just echo a spec," Crane continued, speaking rapidly. "It elaborated. It took our simple signal and returned something far more sophisticated. Like we said hello, and it responded with poetry." "Meaning what?" Ward asked. "Meaning this thing isn't just intelligent, it's more intelligent than us. Or, at least, it's capable of complexity we can barely measure." Crane pulled up another screen. "But here's what kept me up for 4 days. Look at this section." He isolated a portion of the acoustic response, zooming in on a specific frequency range. To Ward's untrained eye, it looked like random noise, but Crane was trembling as he pointed at it. "This pattern here repeats. Not just once, but throughout the entire response. And it's not biological. It's too regular, too precise. It's mathematical. I don't understand, Brooks said. Crane turned to face them, and Ward saw something like fear in the scientist's eyes. It's a ratio, the golden ratio to be specific, Phi 1.618. It appears in nature, in art, in architecture. It's one of the fundamental mathematical constants of the universe, and this thing was broadcasting it to us. Ward felt cold. You're saying it was trying to prove its intelligence? Show us it understands mathematics? I'm saying it was demonstrating intelligence far beyond what we expected. Whales don't broadcast mathematical constants. Dolphins don't encode phi into their communications. This is the behavior of something that understands abstract concepts, symbolic thought, mathematics. Jesus, Brooks whispered. There's more. Crane pulled up yet another graph. The temperature drop we measured around the contact. I've been correlating it with the acoustic output. They're linked. When it increased its acoustic signals, the temperature dropped further. When it went quiet, the temperature normalized. What does that mean? I think it means the creature generates enormous amounts of heat as a byproduct of whatever mechanism allows it to produce those acoustic signals, and it has to actively cool itself, vent that heat into the surrounding water. The thermodynamic energy required for that kind of acoustic output. Crane shook his head. It's using power outputs comparable to a small nuclear reactor. Ward sat down heavily in one of the lab chairs, trying to process this information. An 800-foot creature that understood mathematics and generated nuclear reactor levels of energy. Each new fact made the encounter seem more impossible, not less. Why are you telling me this? He asked quietly. Because when we dock, I'm going to be whisked away by whatever alphabet soup agency handles this kind of thing. My data will be classified. My findings buried under national security protocols. And I want you to know, Commander, what we encountered out there. Crane gestured at the ocean beyond the porthole. That wasn't just a big animal. That was something ancient and vast and intelligent. Something that's been down there, living its life in the deep ocean, while we sail around on the surface thinking we own the sea. You think there are more of them? I'd bet my career on it. Nothing that sophisticated evolves in isolation. There's a population down there, probably small, probably spread across vast territories, living at depths we can't reach, in places we've barely explored. Brooks was staring at the spectrograms with something approaching awe. And we'll never know anything about them, will we? They'll just stay down there, and we'll stay up here. And occasionally, maybe once every few decades, someone will catch a glimpse and file a report that gets buried. Probably, Crane agreed, though I hope I'm wrong. I hope this data changes something, makes people realize that the ocean isn't empty, isn't conquered, isn't understood. There are wonders down there that make our greatest achievements look like children's toys. Ward stood, straightening his uniform out of habit. For what it's worth, Doctor, I believe you. I believe every word. And I'll make sure my report emphasizes the significance of what you found. Thank you, Commander. That means more than you know. They returned to the bridge to complete the mooring procedures. As the Valiant was guided into her berth by harbor tugs, Ward noticed a cluster of official-looking vehicles waiting on the dock. Black SUVs with government plates. Men in suits with serious expressions and security badges. Looks like the welcoming committee's here, Rourke observed. So it begins, Ward muttered. The debriefing started within an hour of docking. Ward spent 6 hours in a windowless room at the Diego Garcia Naval Facility, answering the same questions over and over. What exactly did you see? Why didn't you engage? Why didn't you pursue? What makes you certain it wasn't a Chinese submarine or Russian drone? He answered everything honestly, referring them to his written report, to the sonar data, to Dr. Crane's acoustic analysis. The interrogators. He couldn't think of them as anything else. took notes with neutral expressions, neither confirming nor denying anything. His crew underwent similar debriefings. Voss, Rourke, Brooks, every watchstander who'd been on duty during the encounter. The process was thorough, professional, and completely unsatisfying. 3 days later, Ward was summoned to the base commander's office. Captain Margaret Rivera was a career officer, mid-50s, with the kind of weathered competence that came from decades at sea. She gestured for Ward to sit, then slid a folder across her desk. "Your report has been reviewed," she said without preamble. Along with the reports from the other 5 commanders, Dr. Crane's scientific analysis, and every piece of sensor data from every ship in that convoy. "And?" Ward prompted when she didn't continue. "And officially, you encountered an unidentified subsurface phenomenon of unknown origin. The data has been forwarded to appropriate scientific and military channels for further analysis. Your conduct during the incident has been deemed appropriate and in accordance with established protocols." "That's it?" Rivera leaned back in her chair, and for the first time her professional mask cracked slightly. "Lucas, I've been in the Navy for 32 years. I've seen things that don't make it into the official reports. I've heard stories from sailors who swear on their lives they're telling the truth. And I've learned that the ocean is a lot stranger than anyone wants to admit." "Did you read the full report?" "Every word, including Dr. Crane's technical analysis, which, frankly, reads like science fiction." She paused. "But I believe you. I believe something happened out there that we can't explain. And I believe you handled it exactly right." Ward felt something relax in his chest, a tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. "Thank you, ma'am." "Don't thank me yet." The Navy's official position is that you encountered an unknown biological or geological phenomenon. Not a threat, not a priority, just an anomaly. The data's been classified, but not at the highest levels. It's more, let's not start a panic than, this never happened. What happens to Dr. Crane's findings? He's been offered a consulting position with Naval Research. They want him to continue analyzing the data, look for patterns, see if similar incidents have occurred. Between you and me, I think they're scared. Something that big, that intelligent, that completely off our radar? It means our surveillance of the oceans is worse than we thought. "Are they going to look for it? Mount an expedition?" Rivera smiled thinly. "With what? We barely know where to start. The ocean floor is less mapped than the surface of Mars. That thing could be anywhere, or there could be hundreds of them. We'd never know." She stood, signaling the meeting's end. "Your convoy leaves in 2 days to complete the transit. Standard route, standard procedures. Think you can handle that?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. And Lucas? Whatever you saw out there, whatever you think it was, keep it to yourself. The crew will talk, they always do. But officially, this never rises above strange occurrence at sea. Understood?" "Understood." Ward returned to the Valiant, finding his ship swarming with technicians. They were checking every sensor, every system, downloading data from equipment he hadn't known existed. Making sure, he supposed, that the story the sensors told matched the story the humans told. He found Voss on the bridge, staring out at the harbor. The lieutenant looked tired, but less haunted than he had during the encounter. "How'd your debriefing go?" Ward asked. "About like yours, I'd imagine. Lots of questions, not many answers." Voss turned to face him. "Sir, do you think we'll ever know what it was?" "Honestly, no. I think we glimpsed something the ocean usually keeps hidden, and I think we're lucky it chose not to see us as a threat. It could have destroyed us. Easily. 6 ships, 3,000 people. It could have scattered us like toys. But it didn't. It just looked, and then left." Voss nodded slowly. "I keep thinking about that." Something that powerful, that large, and it didn't care about us at all. We weren't prey, weren't enemies, weren't even interesting enough to stick around for. We were just there, and then we weren't. Does that bother you? Honestly, it's the most humbling thing I've ever experienced. Brooks found them an hour later, carrying a sheaf of papers. Sir, the crew's been writing things down. Stories, observations, things they noticed during the encounter. They wanted me to give these to you. Ward flipped through the pages. A radar operator who'd noticed birds flying erratically before the contact appeared. An engineer who'd felt the ship's engines harmonizing with the subsonic pulses. A young sailor who'd seen what looked like bioluminescence in the water, though that should have been impossible in daylight. Dozens of small observations, pieces of a puzzle that probably wouldn't be solved in his lifetime. Keep them, Ward decided. File them with the ship's unofficial log. Someday, maybe decades from now, someone will want to know the full story. Not just the censored data and official reports, but what it felt like, what we experienced. Aye, sir. The convoy departed Diego Garcia 2 days later, completing the transit without incident. They saw whales, dolphins, the usual marine traffic. No massive shadows, no subsonic pulses. The ocean returned to being ordinary. But Ward found himself watching the water differently now, looking at the spaces between waves, the dark patches that might be cloud shadows or might be something else, wondering what moved in the depths below, what intelligence swam through the darkness, living lives completely separate from the human world above. Rourke caught him staring at the water one evening. Looking for our friend? Just thinking. Me too. I told my wife about it. She didn't believe me at first. Thought I was pulling her leg, telling sea stories like old sailors do. But I sent her the official report, the unclassified parts anyway. She called me crying. Why? She said it made her feel small, knowing something that big and strange exists, that we're not the top of the food chain, that the ocean keeps secrets that massive, it scared her. But not you. Rourke smiled, his weathered face creasing with genuine warmth. Skipper, I've been at sea for 30 years. I've always known we're small. The ocean's been humbling us since the first sailor pushed away from shore. This just made it official. Do you think we'll see it again, or something like it? Maybe, maybe not. Ocean's big, we're small. But if it happens again, at least now we know we're not crazy. Whatever that thing was, it's real, and it's out there. The transit ended without further incident. The convoy dispersed at its destination, ships going their separate ways, crews returning to their normal routines. Life moved on. Ward's report was filed, classified at a level that meant it would be read by a handful of analysts and then buried in digital archives. Dr. Crane's findings went to naval research laboratories, where they'd be studied, debated, and ultimately shelved as insufficient data for conclusive analysis. Brooks rotated to a new assignment. Rourke retired 6 months later, spending his pension on a small house in Florida where he could watch the ocean from his porch. Voss requested transfer to submarine duty, saying he wanted to understand the deep better, see it from the inside. And Ward continued his career, moving up through the ranks, commanding larger ships, taking more responsibility. But he never forgot those hours, when something vast and unknowable had swum beneath his convoy. Years later, as a newly promoted admiral, Ward found himself reviewing reports from other ships, other encounters with inexplicable phenomena. Most were easily dismissed, weather anomalies, equipment malfunctions, overeager imaginations, but occasionally he'd find one that had the ring of truth. A submarine detecting massive acoustic signatures at depths where nothing should exist. A research vessel tracking an object too large and too fast to be any known whale. A cargo ship reporting a moving island that submerged when they approached. Each time, Ward would mark the report for further study, Add it to a growing file he kept in a secure database, not officially, not as part of any sanctioned program. Just an old sailor's curiosity, a desire to know if he'd seen something unique, or simply been the first to document something that happened more often than anyone wanted to admit. The ocean kept its secrets, but occasionally, just occasionally, it gave hints, whispers of something larger moving in the depths. Evidence that humanity's mastery of the seas was an illusion, that we sailed across the surface of a world we barely understood. On quiet nights when Ward couldn't sleep, he'd pull up the acoustic recordings from that day. He'd listen to the subsonic pulses, the complex patterns that Dr. Crane had decoded, the mathematical constants embedded in alien song. And he'd wonder what else was down there, what other intelligence swam through the crushing darkness. What thoughts moved through minds so different from his own that communication was barely possible? The ocean was vast, ancient, deep beyond measure. And somewhere in those depths, something lived that made human civilization feel like a temporary inconvenience, a brief disturbance on the surface that would eventually fade while the deep ocean continued its eternal, patient existence. Ward found comfort in that thought. Not fear, not anymore, just a profound sense of perspective. He was small. Humanity was small. All their ships and technology and presumed dominance, small. And there was something beautiful in that humility. Something right. The encounter had lasted only a few hours. The official investigation had taken weeks. The classification of the report had been permanent. But the lesson had been immediate and unforgettable. The ocean doesn't belong to us. We're just visitors on the surface, sailing across mysteries we'll never fully solve. And maybe that's exactly how it should be. Some secrets are meant to stay secrets. Some depths are meant to remain unexplored. Some intelligence is so vast, so ancient, so fundamentally other that attempting to understand it would be like an ant trying to comprehend a human city. All you can do is witness, acknowledge, and accept your place in an order far larger than yourself. The convoy had been 6 ships moving through empty water, until they realized the water was never empty. Until something rose from the depths to remind them. Until they learned, in the most visceral way possible, that insignificance isn't a curse. It's a gift. It means you're part of something bigger than yourself. Something that existed before you and will exist long after. Something vast, ancient, unknowable, and utterly, absolutely real. Ward closed his laptop, the acoustic recordings fading to silence. Outside his office window, the ocean stretched to the horizon, dark and infinite under the evening sky. Somewhere out there, in depths measured in miles, something moved. Something thought. Something existed completely independent of human awareness or understanding. And that, Ward decided, was exactly as it should be. The ocean kept its secrets. And some secrets were worth keeping.